Up until last weekend, my friends, I definitely would have held that the movie adaptation of Chicago is the best of the musical theater film adaptations. Honestly, I still think it is utterly fantastic and that it uplifts the source material in a brilliant way, does something that the stage show can't do. That being said, last weekend, something wicked this way came, and now that leaves us wondering, did Wicked just claim the top spot? Huh? And with only half of the movie adaptation out currently, will it then keep that top spot? So why does this movie work so well? And how do all of the elements work together? We're gonna dive in here, we're going to do a little reviewing, and we're gonna find out. A quick note though. There will be spoilers ahead. Spoiler alert. There are spoilers. So just know that going in. I've said it many a time. Hi, if you don't know me, I'm Michael Ratty, aka Musical Theater Writer Guy, aka your musical theater writing coach. And I am the founder of Musical Theater Writing Collective. I teach courses, I do coaching, and here we are. Musical theater is what I do. Musical theater writing is like my life. And so, hey, we've been waiting for that Wicked movie for a very, very long time. Let's not forget that the first time it officially appeared online as being in pre-production, I believe, was in 2015. That being said, as I was working in Broadway theaters, I was bartending as one of my first jobs when I moved to the city. I heard rumors of a Wicked movie as early as 2012. So, this thing has been in the works for a very long time, to the point where it kind of became a little bit of a joke, right? People would be like, oh, movie adaptations of musicals, and also Wicked. Like, Wicked, it's forever in pre-production. And then, little did we know, they were taking their time for a good reason. So, um, if you have not yet seen it, but you have seen the stage show, just so you know, what the first part of this movie is, it is Act One, but fleshed out. So, Wicked the musical on stage with an intermission runs somewhere under 2.5 hours. This film, part one, was 2 hours and 40 minutes. So when I say they really took their time, they fleshed things out, we get to see dialogue take its time, we get to see scenes that don't actually exist. Like it treats it more like a film than, oh look, we just filmed the musical. So we are going from the beginning, from the knowledge that Elphaba has died and people are celebrating, into our flashback mode, starting at when they get to Shiz, actually a little bit before that as well. Some childhood stuff gets tossed in there with very cute children. Oh my God, can we give it up for little Nessa Rose, please? And then moving forward all the way to Defying Gravity. So that is what the film is covering. Now, in terms of, is that a good choice to fill it out? All right. I read the book a very long time ago in, oh gosh, let's see, Wicked came out in 2003, really blew up in my world around 2004 early. So it would have been summer 2004. I read the book of Wicked, which came out in 1995. Is a delightful book. Perhaps a bit darker than I had expected it to be. But one of the things I really enjoyed about the book is that it dives into the world that L.F. Baum had created in a way that pays a lot of homage to the darkness that's inherent to the book of The Wonderful Wizard of Oz. And I was kind of sad after reading that book that there wasn't more in the musical that was building out a big old world, or really fleshing out this phenomenal land or set of lands of countries, the politics of it, who these different people are, and what their interactions are like or could be like. The musical is really doing what a musical does, and that means that because of the amount of ground needed to be covered in the Wicked musical, it moves quickly at a huge clip. In fact, I often talk to people about how Act Two of Wicked pretty much has no plot in it. It's like song to song to song to song to song to song, done, right? Because there's just not a lot of time. Now, If Schwartz could go back, do I think he'd flesh it out a little bit more? Yeah, I think he would. It was kind of a rush process getting Wicked to the stage, and then, hey, lightning in a bottle, it blows up, becomes one of the only billion-dollar musical theater properties. And here we are. That being said, the book had all this great stuff fleshed out in it, right? And what they did in this film so smartly was not only did they take their time with what the musical already provides in Act One and create more, so we can get to spend time with these characters, get to see scenes we hadn't seen before, get to really live in the world created by the filmmakers and the musical writers in combination, but also pulled in elements from the book. There are little nods to things that just are not really included or nodded to or referenced or spoken about in the musical at all. So if you're familiar with the original The Wonderful Wizard of Oz book and or The Wicked book, I think you will catch a lot of that really enriches the world. That's enough about plot, though. Let's talk about important things like performances. Okie dokie. Let's talk about those performances. I think universally thus far, we have had just rave reviews for Cynthia Erivo. Let's give it up for Cynthia. Cynthia is nailing it. Also, just talking about the performers for a second. Cynthia and Ariana, if you've not been watching their interviews, I mean, they're not really doing the press junket at this moment anymore, but if you weren't watching those interviews as they were coming up on the release date of Wicked, go back and watch them. The two of them are delightful, wonderful, warm, welcoming, quirky, and we are all holding space for the lyrics of Defying Gravity. Well, holding a nail. And it's pretty epic. Pardon me. Now, Cynthia nailed it. The characterization was beautiful. Obviously, the vocals were stunning, utterly stunning, all the way throughout. Those riffs were so good. But even more than the riffs, the kind of character acting she was able to do, yes, close up because it's film. We love that. We love what that offers. That's great and that's lovely and wonderful and also expected. She's a theatrical performer. She's very smart. She's truly one of the greatest talents of this generation. Oh my God. But on top of that, what she was able to bring acting wise into the vocals. And I think this goes in large part to the choice they made to sing live on set, which we'll get to. But like the depth of performance for Elphaba was stunning, utterly stunning. That being said, less universally loved is Ariana Grande as Glinda. Now, I loved Ariana as Glinda. I had a blast with her. I thought she truly embodied what Glinda is all about. That being said, I do hear the critique from people that she does not sing like a coloratura soprano. And so even though she has the notes, she has the chops to hit everything in the show, including an option up, that it doesn't feel the same or sound the same as the way the role was written, let alone the way that Kristen Chenoweth played it many eons ago. Yes, and something I want to offer in that regard is Ariana was trained early and was a Broadway kid first. So, yeah, when people were like, I don't know if she can even sing it, I was like, oh, I have no doubt she'll be able to sing it. That's not a problem at all. Did she musical theaterize her performance for this movie? Yes. Yes, she did. Did she go into the world of coloratura soprano? She did not. And I don't know that for me, that was a deal breaker. But I hear the critique that other people are offering. For me, I thought she was wonderful and a beautiful fit and a wonderful juxtaposition to Cynthia Erivo's Elphaba. Going down the other list of performances here, hey, Jonathan Bailey, everyone. I knew he would be fun and delightful and charming, and he was. He didn't get a ton of screen time in this first part, but he'll definitely get more in part two, I can only assume. Did not know he could dance the way he dances, though, so I just want to give it up to Jonathan Bailey for the dancing. Jeff Goldblum. I don't know that I've really heard him sing previously. When he started to sing a bit, I was like, this rings familiar to me. He's not a singer, but he does a great job. But he is a perfect choice for the Wizard, in my opinion. What a wonderful um, characterization of someone who is ultimately just a showman. And I mean, Jeff Goldblum is wonderful and phenomenal always, and I'm in love. Michelle Yeoh was so good. I thought a brilliant choice for Madame Morrible. I have heard some complaints about how auto-tuned she sounds on that one section that Madame Morrible sings at the beginning of The Wizard and I. I hear you. I hear you. I also say, shush, sit down. She was great. She was a wonderful choice. She nailed the role. But you can feel how you feel. Peter Dinklage, I thought was a delight. Such a wonderful voice actor. I don't think I've ever seen him in a role where he's purely voice acting and not himself physically on camera because he has such great facial expression. But I think they captured what he would be doing with Dr. Dillman very, very well on screen. And I thought his acting was lovely. Um, and then of course we have our SpongeBob as Bach. And he was delightful and charming and everything I wanted him to be, and it was great to see some other Broadway talent on there. And Marissa Bode was also lovely. Did not get the kind of screen time I was expecting in part one, so I really hope we get more in part two. I also just want to take a moment and say that the comments about her online and her disability as a human being I do not condone. Just throwing that out there. At nowhere in life do we ever say that someone deserves their disability, people. Let's not do that, okay? She was wonderful, and I love that slight fleshing out of Nessa Rose in this film. I want more, so much more. But the performances across the board were so good. Can we also talk about that ensemble? The Broadway ensemble. And truly Broadway. I mean, they pulled performers from all sorts of different casts from Wicked to create that ensemble. They sounded phenomenal. They danced phenomenally. It looked and sounded great. Can you tell I enjoyed this film? I did. I really enjoyed this film. We'll get to my final thoughts at the end, of course. Onward. Let's talk about direction and choreography. The first thing I'm just going to say is, y'all, production numbers. Big production numbers in a musical movie. How long has it been since we've got good, big production numbers? That felt big. And we're filmed differently throughout. I really appreciated the movement of the camera work through the ensemble numbers. There are what, four big ensemble sequences, I believe, in this first film, and each of them had a different feel to it. Beautifully executed, so good, so wonderful to look at. The choreography was stunning. Really great nods to the original Broadway production while enhancing and taking it further, which I always appreciate. I sit firmly in the camp that if you are going to take a story that sits in one medium and then adapt it to a different medium or an adjacent medium, a related medium, do it to uplift that material. Add something, bring a new something to it. And I think the direction and choreography are excellent examples of a way that you can uplift something that's already so good, right? Wicked the musical is so good. I know there are people out there who will fight with me about that because I've been fighting about that for 20 years with people. And yet, look at how well it has done for the past 20 years around the world. It resonates with people. This movie, I think, resonated even deeper, which speaks highly, highly to the direction and the choreography. Just beautiful. The blending of the book, the musical, and also pulling in elements from the 1939 original Wizard of Oz film was such a smart directorial choice. And I'm sure it was more than just the director here, but like the references. Y'all, can we just talk about the references from Wizard of Oz? There were so many great ones. Little Easter eggs just tossed in there. I don't know how many of them people were picking up on. I think I caught all of them. Um, I don't know. I'm seeing it again tomorrow night, so I guess I'll tell you then. But it was beautifully constructed in a way that gave big old nods to the musical, big old nods to the Book of Wicked, and big old nods to the Wizard of Oz. What more could you ask for? So, direction, choreography, woo! Loved it. Um, let's talk about that new song for a second. I loved it. I had a great time. I can't wait to hear it again. I have not downloaded the soundtrack, y'all. I've not been listening to the soundtrack. I know there are lots of people out there who have been and probably have studied it much deeper than I have. Good for you. I will get there one day. Just not have had the time with the holiday. That being said, I thoroughly enjoyed that new song for a couple of reasons. Number one, it felt like it fit so well in that moment in Oz, in a sequence that I think was so much more fleshed out, right? The idea of One Short Day in the stage musical, it's never been my favorite song. It's a decent number. It's a good production moment. Gives a moment of fun for Glinda and Elphaba as they introduce this new world that's being introduced to us at the same time. Yes, lovely. The film, though, you can do so much more visually and in terms of movement, and they did. And also storytelling, background, right? So this song fit beautifully in that sequence, just as a song. Felt very Stephen Schwartz. I enjoyed it. It was lovely. But also, I love the delivery of the extra information, the extra exposition that we don't get in the musical normally as to the background of what happened pre-Wizard and why do we love the Wizard so much. Then, of course, we have to talk about the cameos, right? I mean, to have our two leads, our two loves. I just, it was so heartwarming to see them back together and to be singing not only Wicked material, but to be next to their current day counterparts. And also, I mean, Adina pulling out uh the standard riff at the end of the song that she did for Wicked and I is lovely and wonderful. But the two of them are just so charming. They've always been so charming, and bringing them out was a wonderful reminder of, oh look, this is where this whole thing started. Now look at where we are. Right. This story has gone through a progression, and putting all four of them together like that kind of showed us that in a way that if you weren't aware, it's like, oh, right, here's where we began, here's where we are now, and look at this passing down, this nod, this new generation of not only fans of Wicked, but also performers of Wicked. Throughout the years, how many people have played these roles? I had a great time with that new number. Um, I'd be curious to hear what people think about it. Uh, YouTube is telling me that the chat is disconnected. So if you're chatting with me, I can't see you. And if you can't chat, my apologies. I don't know what's up with that. Um, okay, so let's talk about the design of the thing. Was this not a beautiful film to look at? From the very first moments all the way through. Starting with that nod in the black and white, putting Wicked in the script of the original Wizard of Oz script was just so pretty and smart. There was something about the way that the colorization was done throughout the film, whether that was through practical colors of costumes and set pieces, or it was CGI'd in, that evoked, yes, the 1939 Technicolor film, but while bringing it into the modern age, right? It doesn't look exactly the same. Technicolor is honestly a bit much, right? Those are very bright and very saturated colors from that original 1939 film. Now, this had all of the brightness that you wanted and the saturation that you wanted while still making it feel like it's a living world and not like a bunch of sets. That being said, we got practical sets and they were great. They were cool. I really enjoyed that Shiz set. That's one of the reasons I'm very excited to go back tomorrow is I want to see more about that set and like spend time in the details. And they did a beautiful job of blending in the CGI with the set work, in my opinion. I know that you can tell the difference between what's CGI and what's not, but like you have to look for it. If you're just not thinking about it and you're sitting back, I don't think you'd be able to tell. And that is difficult to do and takes a lot of time and energy and effort. And I really appreciate that they did that. I also really like that the Land of Oz is certainly based in the original look from the Wizard of Oz film, but has been altered for this particular version of the story, this particular version of the world. There's something about saying, yes, these are my roots, and let's do something a little bit different. That is just so inherent to musical theater as a genre, right? That's how we adapt things. We take something that we want to turn into a musical and we say, yes, this is my foundation. And also, here's what I'm going to do with it. So I thought bringing that into the design was phenomenal, an excellent choice. I also think that in terms of fleshing out and enhancing the musical in general, they also did a great job of doing that with the looks. Again, to go back to the Oz scenes, I really enjoyed how much variety there was in the costuming, the looks, the colors, the choices. Everything that you see in the stage version is still there. It's just, again, that's the basis. And it was just so pretty to look at. The design was so good, the cinematography, and the lighting. Y'all, the lighting. Did everyone catch the moment with the hat when the shadow was directly over her eyes and it looked like the original poster? Like, that's good stuff. They took their time. They really put in the effort. Um, in terms of the overall quality of this thing, top to bottom, I was impressed. I was thrilled. I was moved. I was excited. I am excited for the next part. And like, I cried multiple times. It's a deeply resonant story to begin with, but what they added in, the way that they were able to find extra depth certainly moved me in ways where I was like, I don't cry here in the musical. Actually, I don't think I ever have cried in the musical. But it got me a solid two times, maybe even three. We'll see what tomorrow brings. Now that I've seen it once, we'll see how many times I cry on the second time through. But I think a large part of that is because of the overall cohesion, right? Everything aligned really nicely. You can tell they had intention going in. They took their time, they did the work, and they always had an eye on the audience, which we'll talk about in a second, all to bring it together into alignment. All of the elements from the production elements to the casting elements to the post-production elements, everything worked so beautifully together. It was almost seamless. And that, how often do we see that in any film, any epic, any fantasy? And yet, adding in the fact that it's a musical on top of that, when do we see that in a musical? It is so rare. Oh, so good. In terms of the audience, I those of you who know me will know that we constantly talk about how you have to be very specific about who you're writing for, who your audience is, because the more specific you get, the more universal it becomes. That being said, I think for the first time ever, this film may be actually for everybody. How I don't fully comprehend, but somehow, yes, there are people I know and don't know, but I've seen online, who really loved the film, enjoyed it so much, are singing songs from it, who I never would have thought would like this movie, let alone would like the musical, right? So there is something about this that's really connecting with people. I mean, in the theater I was in, it was a pretty small theater and it was packed. Everyone was engaged, lots of emotions, tons of laughter. There were gasps at certain moments, which I'm like, oh my God, how many people here have never seen Wicked before? Because the way that people were gasping, I was like, oh gosh, yeah, I guess if this is your first time through this story, you would like intake air there. And there were so many young people like young Gen Zs in there. We're talking teenagers, late teens, early 20s, who I was listening to conversations. There were a lot of people who hadn't seen Wicked before and were falling in love with it as they went through. It was fun to listen to the audience as we left. And then, of course, there were tons of sniffles throughout as well. In those moments that are a bit deeper and more connective in an emotional way, heard tons of sniffling throughout the theater. Um, oh gosh, yeah. And yeah, I mean, I think a large part of that is because this musical does, or excuse me, this movie does what the musical does, but it does it deeper in a more resonant way. And a large part of that is because of the time they were able to take in addition to the care that they gave as well. Um, I also just want to say that the movie seems to do what the book does But because it's a musical, and because of the way it is done visually, it feels less dark while still hitting on important themes. And of course, like I said, there are tons of Wizard of Oz references. Um, I think the most obvious one, besides the script of Wicked in the title screen, is the cub peeking its head out on the bike, very reminiscent of Toto. Um, at one point, I think it was Madame Morrible said to Elphaba not to be a gulch, and Mrs. Gulch is the name of the mean lady, the mean neighbor. There were birds flying over the rainbow. One of my friends said that they were specifically bluebirds at the end of the Wizard and I couldn't tell that they were bluebirds, but I'm going to be looking out for it. So that's a fun thing to watch visually happen. We had the red heels being brought out for Elphaba at one point, and they were being clicked together on the beat 3 times, like cute little things like that. There's probably more I didn't pick up on, but I'm gonna search on through. I'm gonna take a sip of water here, and then we will continue with this review. I really wish these comments were working so I could see what you all think. Please chat away and comment away as we go through this. So curious what everyone else was picking up on, what everyone else is thinking. I'm so sorry that my YouTube comments is just not working. If it isn't open, do make sure to come back and leave an actual comment if you can't chat right now. I do want to talk about the few gripes I have because, as you can hear, this is a solid and wonderful and fantastic film, and I loved it, and I'll grade it at the end. But I do have a few gripes. They're little, and then I'll talk about some other positive things. Um, so the first gripe I have is there was a lot of diversity in this film. That's not the gripe. Um, though I'm sure you've all seen some of the people out there who are mad about how diverse the film was, which fascinates me. But there's a ton of diversity in the casting, which was lovely and wonderful. But the only kind of diversity I didn't really see here was body diversity. I don't know if that was being done on purpose. There's something about the world of Oz, specifically the Emerald City and in Shiz, where they are making a reference to a certain kind of person that is not the same as who Elphaba is, right? We're creating direct, stark contrast. And I don't know if thinness was a part of that or not. I really don't know. But I did clock that I only saw 2 people who weren't either athletic because they are Broadway dancers or thin people. And I was like, why? Does this country not have more diversity than this? And also, do none of the ensemble members of the different Wicked casts who are dancers, are none of them fat? So I had a question about that. It it struck me as odd, mostly. So if anyone has a thought on that or an answer on that, I would love to hear. Um, so that's one gripe I had. Another one, this is so small, and it probably didn't bother most people, but I did feel like the transitions into some of the songs felt a little bit clunky. Um, And not in terms of what the sound was doing. I think the way the soundtrack, the scoring of this film was phenomenal. Like no qualms there. But the way that the score moved into the songs themselves, I thought was very smart and very well done. What I'm mostly referring to is, and you'll be familiar with this if you worked with me in any of my courses or anything, the emotional arc of the scene. We kind of ride emotional arc as it increases in intensity, and then we hit a breaking point when the song begins. I kind of felt there were a couple of times like the rising emotion, and then there was a dip back down into like relief or release before the song began. And that just felt a little strange to me. I clocked it 3 times, and there's what, only 9 or 10 songs in the film in part one. So that was something that came to my mind. And then the third one is, again, a very small gripe, and I already kind of mentioned it, which is I really wanted to spend more time with some of those side characters, smaller characters. And I really, really, really hope that we get to in part two because the fleshing out of the main character stories was so fun and wonderful and interesting. And I can only assume that it would be fun and wonderful and interesting to see these smaller roles being fleshed out as well. So that's where I felt my personal gripes were. If you have other gripes that you're missing, please toss them in. But do be respectful always, always in the comment section, please, please, please. Okay, let's talk about a few other things here. Um, I think it's worth mentioning that a film version of Wicked makes Wicked so wonderfully accessible. And I mean accessible in terms of like, hey, you love movies, but maybe you don't love musicals. Here, have a movie that just happens to be a musical. Because as I mentioned, there are a lot of people out there who I didn't think would enjoy this film. I know a lot of people who don't like musicals that much, who are loving this film. So I do think there is accessibility in that regard, but also ticket price accessibility. I mean, yes, movies are way more expensive than they used to be. So even if you're paying 20 bucks to go to the movie to see this film, and you pay $20 this year and then $20 next year when part two comes out, $40 total, you will not be getting a ticket to Wicked for $40. You would have to get some sort of real special deal on that in order to go see Wicked for $40. Wicked have been playing on Broadway for 21 years. And I believe the lowest ticket price standardly throughout the year is $87 in the back of the mezzanine. There's a reason I haven't gone back to see the show in a very long time. It's because the ticket prices never drop. So, and like, it's not that I'm not willing to shell out the money. It's just there's always new stuff to see, right? But this makes it so much more accessible to see this story as a musical. And I think that's beautiful and wonderful. Um, and also, it is having an impact on people, right? There's a big social impact here from this film. There are going to be a whole new generation of Wicked fans because of how wonderfully put together this film is and how deeply it's resonating. And of course, you have the nostalgia factor as well for all of us who were around 21 years ago when this thing A came out and then B got big, right? Wicked went viral before we were doing viral. Um, I recall I was a sophomore year, right? It was sophomore year of high school. Yes, I was a sophomore in high school because it was fall 2003 when this stage musical came out. And the way that everyone just started talking about it and it got passed around, and then we were all buying the soundtrack and we were listening together, excuse me, the cast recording, the OBC, and we were listening together and we were singing it and we were buying the sheet music and we were just falling in love with it more and more, trying to figure out what the intricacies of the story were without having seen the show, everyone trying to get their tickets whenever they possibly could. The fact that it went out on tour as quickly as it did made it more accessible while the Broadway production was still nailing it over there. I think they did a really wonderful job of kind of creating a reach and creating a fan base with this show. And also, that means that there is a humongous population of people who are excited about this, whether they've seen Wicked recently or not, who fell in love with it 21 years ago, who are returning to it. So things like the cameos that were delightful. And I mean, I didn't walk into the film thinking Adina and Kristen were going to be in it, but I was delighted by that, right? I was like, oh, my girls, my people, right? Um, so we have multiple generations loving this film at the same time. And then on top of that, the other major impact, besides the deep emotional impact of a universal story, such a universal story, right? We're talking about a story about people who feel like outsiders. There's a show on Broadway right now called The Outsiders, right? This is a thing that we get to over and over again in film, in plays, in musicals, in TV shows. This idea of someone who feels othered, who then goes through something big and deep while finding their authenticity and coming into who they are and owning it. It's a deeply resonant and universal story, no matter how you have felt othered and by whom. But in addition to all that, this story feels important and a bit timely. Think we all get what I mean when I say that? Please don't make me get specific. In fact, it's caused a lot of media on the right side of the political spectrum to be very mad about the film and ask questions of why are certain people being cast in the way they are, not cast as in like the role that was given, but cast as in like um being shown, being portrayed in the way that they are. Yeah, it is a timely story about um creating enemies and out of people who do not deserve that, and manipulation and what is happening societally for a lot of people. So I do think it has a big and deep social and cultural impact right now. That being said, like target audience on this, who do I think would enjoy this most? Because apparently everyone enjoys it except for the people, the small group of people that are very loudly shouting about how they didn't enjoy it. But a very small group, and for very specific reasons. I do think it is a great film for families, for for couples, for Broadway enthusiasts, obviously. For people who are fans of fantasy, I think they'll be delightfully surprised. For people who are fans of the original Wizard of Oz story, um, yeah, but like it is kind of for everyone. Everyone with a heart and a brain and a wee bit of courage. Enough courage to go try it out. You're welcome. Um, And like, okay, just getting to my personal recommendation and wrapping this up, like I was truly floored by this film. I expected to like it. I did. By the time people were talking about it, because I was pretty late in seeing it in my friend group, pretty much everyone else had seen it. I was 10 days in, everybody, and everyone had already gone. By the time I was going, I knew I'd love it, but I did not expect to be blown away, and I was. It was so good top to bottom, and it is so cohesive and lovely and wonderful. I fell in love. I am so excited to see it again tomorrow, and I can't wait for part two to come out. It feels like torture that's going to be a full year, which is a smart choice on their part. Um, so my personal recommendation here is go. If you haven't gone, just go. And if you did go, go again. Or however you do it, do watch it again. I think it is well worth the time to go watch it again. This is an A plus in my book. If we were doing like gaming ratings, I would put Wicked Part 1 in the S tier, my friends. This is an S tier film. So A plus for me. The worst thing that could happen is if you go, you only kind of like it. I really don't think you're going to end up hating it. And I think the people out there who say they hate it may or may not actually hate it. Could just be more for a talking point than anything, and attention. And that's me. That's how I feel about this film. I thought Wicked Part 1 was beautiful and brilliant, and a large part of why this works so freaking well is because of the time they took, the energy they put in, all those years of pre-production really paid off, and post-production, what they did. The alignment of all of the elements across that intention of telling a story that's going to be universal and really hit at the heart of what everyone wants from this film and this story. It came through, it showed, it was gorgeously done, and I was stunned. It was great. Can't wait to see it again tomorrow. My friends, I'm so sorry that my chat isn't working. So normally I would stay here for the extra 20 minutes. We'd do some Ask Me Anything. But if you do have anything you want to know or you want to say, please put it in the comments below. I do these live streams every 2 weeks. I will have one more live stream in 2 weeks for this year before we hit 2025. But if you have opinions on Wicked, and I'm sure you do, please drop them in. I am very interested to hear what people are thinking, are saying. And otherwise, my friends, there will be a new video for me next Friday, like there always is. I so very much appreciate you being here with me. Go see Wicked if you haven't. If you have, go see it again. I adore you all. Have a wonderful Friday and a wonderful weekend, and I'll see you all soon. All right, goodbye, everyone.